Going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. Today we've got another 40k video for you guys, reacting to another video from the Scholar's Lore. One of the things, I've known a little bit about the Tyranids, and we've gone into a couple of videos about the Tyranids, but I've never really learned anything about the Genestealers. And I saw this video from the Scholar's Lore come up about the, I'm sure I'm pronouncing his name wrong, I'm sure I'm gonna butcher it, Tyranid Ymgarl Genestealers, Y-M-G-A-R-L, Ymgarl. I don't know, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. We'll find out here as we check out this video. But I saw this pop up on my feed and I wanted to check this out because I want to learn more about the Genestealers and the Tyranids. So yeah, we're gonna check this out. As always, a link will be down in the description down below this video, to the Scholar's Lore channel and to the original video here without my commentary. So if you want to check that stuff out, just click down below in the description. And yeah, I guess let's get into this video here without further ado. Your volume. Bada boom, bada bing.
The Tyrannic Wars have been documented as a series of large-scale galactic conflicts, where the myriad of species native to the Milky Way have been forced to combat the prodigious tides of the encroaching Tyranid hive fleets. These...
Just a quick aside, you know, from what I understand, the Horus Heresy series is wrapping up, or has wrapped up, with the final book coming out. And I've heard rumors that they're going to be expanding more on the Tyranid invasion. A little bit more. I think it's just rumor or theory. I don't know if that's actual, you know, what's going to happen or not. But it would be interesting. I'm curious how, you know, if the Tyranid invasion would ever get to a scale or get something so serious to the point where, you know, factions would have to ally, essentially. Alliances would have to be formed to really combat them properly. I know that, you know, there have been temporary alliances, I think, between certain factions or primarchs or soldiers, captains, whoever, of various chapters of Space Marines and Necrons, or Mechanicus and Necrons and things like that, and various things to fight the Tyranids, depending on, you know, the factions, etc. So I don't know. It would be interesting if the Tyranid threat ever got to that scale to where, you know, loose alliances would have to be formed to, like, truly combat them. Like, I wonder if they ever would take the Tyranids' threat to that great of a scale to where they would be, like, the primary antagonist, you know, for pushing the timeline of the 40k universe forward, you know, a little bit more, and maybe kind of foreshadow, I guess, some more things happening with Chaos and Chaos Marines, and, you know, maybe another Black Crusade happening in the future after that or something. You know, I don't know. This is just my own thinking, but I wonder if that would ever be something that they would ever get to. But anyway, continuing on with the video.
Tides of the encroaching Tyranid hive fleets. These are truly horrific aliens who have drifted through the inky void of intergalactic space, all to feast upon the rich biodiversity of life which they have detected. We are somewhat accustomed to the progressive steps of a Tyranid invasion. However, one of the first signs of a hive fleet approaching would be to discover some evidence of Genestealers being present upon a planet.
Right.
This is an incredibly adaptive and highly varied bioform, which has proved to be the bane of perhaps billions of lives.
From what I understand, I don't know a ton about Genestealers, but from what I understand about Genestealers, they're almost kind of like maybe the first wave of a potential invasion. It's kind of similar to, I guess, how Chaos works with corruption in certain aspects, where, you know, Genestealers can come in. I don't know if they necessarily take over, you know, human bodies. You know, the humans are like hosts and they're like parasites, and they take them over, and then they use the host to, like, create dissent and create, you know, cults to worship the Tyranids, and eventually that all, like, spreads, and again they amass enough force to where they can create civil wars and revolt and things like that, and essentially sow, chaos and disarray on a planet until the main Tyranid fleet can come in and just make things easier for them. That's what I understand. So, I mean, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, and, maybe I'll learn a lot more in this video here. But it sounds like this video might be in general about a specific sub-faction of Genestealers, maybe, or I don't know, maybe he'll get into it a little bit more, but let's find out.
Form, which has proved to be the bane of perhaps billions of lives. They may have brought death through their vicious and lightning-fast, combative ability, or because they managed to bring an entire planet low thanks to the establishment of a despicable gene-stealer cult.
Yeah.
Whilst the first recorded contact with the Tyranids is officially credited as occurring upon the world of Tiran, in the year 745 of the 41st millennium, Imperial scholars believe that the actual first contact occurred around 200 years before this, upon the moons of Ymgarl. It was a fleet of Imperial merchant navy vessels which first discovered the peculiar aliens, and they first presumed them to simply be a vile species native to the moons. Unfortunately, their contact was not limited to simply observing the sinister beasts, as they were instead plagued by the creatures' attempts of infiltrating and eviscerating the crews of their ships.
Now, from what I understand, just a little pause here, there have also been even further back in time, even, I think, to the time period of, the Dark Age of technology, yada, yada, where they might not have known they were Tyranids at the time, but Tyranid ships were found on various planets, like frozen in ice and stuff like that. I remember watching some video of their saying some lore about that. So it could be that the Tyranids have been around even further. And that kind of, I've talked about this in previous videos. My thought process is, I wonder if the Tyranids are something similar to like the Reapers in Mass Effect, where they let life evolve in various galaxies, to a certain point. They let life, spread and evolve and grow to a certain point to where they then come in, invade, absorb, eat, consume all the biomass, whatever they can, until that galaxy is empty, and then they move on to another galaxy, and it's just a cycle. They just keep moving around to galaxies and galaxies, letting life evolve so that they can absorb it and evolve. And I don't know if the idea is that they want to, try to become like this perfect organism, and by absorbing, life from various species, that only adds to the hive mind collective, kind of very Borgish, you know what I mean? So, and that's kind of the idea that I get from Tyranids in general. It's kind of like a Borg, Reaper, Zerg kind of thing where, yeah, they're just going out to absorb biomass to help them evolve. To what end, I guess, I don't think is really known yet, right? So, I would assume it's just to become a more perfect organism, I guess, kind of like, again, how the Borg were, but I don't know. That's just my speculation, so.
The creatures' attempts of infiltrating and eviscerating the crews of their ships. Over the following centuries, xenologists have confirmed that these creatures were simply a variant of the reviled Tyranid Genestealers, a bioform which has been specialized towards the acts of infiltration, and who are often found within the vanguard of a larger Tyranid force. Nevertheless, the danger posed by these Ymgarl Genestealers prompted the Imperium to set out on a campaign to eradicate the moons from their plague. Even with the veterans of the Salamander chapter of Astartes being deployed, they still found themselves to be pitted against a most disturbing foe, which could effortlessly tear the Imperial agents to shreds before diving back into the dark shadows to continue their long hibernation. After several years of scouring, the Salamanders were forced to withdraw, and yet the sinister beasts of Ymgarl remained, waiting for further prey to foolishly explore their homes. These gene stealers were noted as differing greatly from the variants more commonly encountered throughout the tyrannic wars. Most notably, they possessed the limited ability to shapeshift, where they would take on the appearance of other creatures or inanimate objects, allowing them to go almost completely unnoticed by their prey until the time would come to pounce. They will then use their razor-sharp claws, barbed hooks and lashing tentacles to ensnare and eviscerate their foes. Once their prey has been incapacitated, the gene stealer can then use their vile feeder tendrils to latch onto the victim's body, allowing the beast to feast upon the poor victim's prized blood, which was the preferred source of biomass for these malign creatures.
That brings up an interesting question. Are there different sub-factions of Tyranids that have different cravings, I guess? I don't know if that's the proper word. But if you're saying that these gene stealers... I mean, I guess maybe gene stealers might want blood and DNA more than other normal Tyranid factions, because they might... Gene stealers use those genes to, you know, enhance their abilities, to make their infiltration methods better. Maybe because they shapeshift, they would use that DNA as a means to... That's how they're able to... by absorbing the DNA of other creatures, they're able to take on their forms, etc., etc. But it also just brings up the question of, do Tyranids in general, are there different like sub-factions of Tyranids that seek out different types of biomass for different purposes? Like these guys seek out blood for a specific reason. Do others like seek out, you know, bones or, you know, carcasses, whatever, for whatever purposes, you know? I'm just curious about that. But anyway.
Third source of biomass for these malign creatures. Due to their shape-shifting abilities, the Ymgarl Genestealers have incredibly high metabolic requirements. They need to constantly feed on new prey.
Interesting.
But if they cannot locate a new source of biomass, then they will enter into a state of prolonged hibernation, where they will simply wait until their sleep is disturbed, upon which they will spring back into the hunt, eager to sate their ravenous hunger for blood.
Sounds pretty efficient, you know? I'm trying to think of, like, what kind of creature that we would have here would have something similar. The only thing I'm really thinking of, for whatever reason, is, like, you know, like alligators or crocodiles. You know, they don't necessarily have to eat very often, and they can go into a type of, you know, hibernation or whatever in certain types of weather, you know, to survive. And then obviously once they come out, they would have to eat. And of course, bears can go into a prolonged hibernation and stuff like that. But I'm just trying to think of any other kind of creatures that would have similar traits, but nothing's really coming to mind.
The hunt, eager to sate their ravenous hunger for blood. Whilst their ability to shapeshift may seem highly advantageous, the hive mind does not. And as such, if a hive fleet has invaded a planet with these Ymgarl Genestealers being present, then they will not reabsorb them into the fleet.
That's very interesting. They're literally like a separate, unique faction of the Tyranids that don't have any real connection to the hive mind. Huh. I wonder why that is. I wonder if the hive mind sees, you know, specific evolutionary traits like that as not wanted, or I don't know what the proper word is that I'm looking for, but not in line, I guess, with whatever the ideals of evolution that the hive mind would think. And it's interesting that they would allow them to live, right? You know what I mean? Because, like, I don't know, just my thinking, if you're the hive mind, I would think you would want to have control over all the Tyranids as possible. And so if you have like an evolutionary offshoot of some kind of Tyranid Genestealers or whatever, that you don't approve of, I would think you would want to wipe them out, right? And not let them evolve any further. I mean, I guess, I don't know. We don't know, I would assume. There hasn't been any kind of lore or anything written, but I mean, if there is a Tyranid hive mind, who says there couldn't, you know, if Tyranids grow in enough numbers that another hive mind couldn't form, you know what I mean? And would they see that as a rival? And who knows, maybe there's not just one, maybe there's multiple, you know? I don't know, just more speculation, more thoughts.
Genestealers being present, then they will not reabsorb them into the fleet. Instead, the hive will simply abandon them on the barren rock, caring not for the fact that they will simply starve in lonely hibernation.
I guess, yeah, that would be a potential answer to the question that I posed, is instead of wasting resources and creatures that you could potentially lose, you know, trying to eradicate an offshoot, you just sit there and let them starve. But I would think they would also know that they could go into a type of hibernation where that wouldn't happen. But, you know, who knows, in space, some of these planets might not get, if all life is wiped out on a planet, you know, the chances of humans or some other kind of alien life forms coming and landing on the planet could be astronomical, you know, finding the planet. So, but who knows?
That they will simply starve in lonely hibernation. This is likely due to the metabolic load required by this strain, and the fact that there would be a possibility that this trait could spread throughout a hive fleet, which would be devastating for the Tyranids.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say when he was talking about the high metabolic needs. I wonder if that's one of the reasons why the hive mind would not want that evolutionary path or whatever, you know, to progress. Because if the rest of the Tyranids evolve to needing more energy to sustain them more often, then they could end up just killing themselves off after they consume everything and not be able to survive trips to other galaxies or whatever, you know what I mean?
Throughout a hive fleet, which would be devastating for the Tyranids. If an entire hive fleet had the metabolic requirements of the Ymgarl Genestealers, then it would rapidly starve and would not be able to advance through space fast enough to satisfy their new cravings.
I mean, that makes sense, but also if they have, I guess it would depend on like the hibernation like state and how long they could stay in hibernation for. Because if they could go into some kind of prolonged hibernation state, it would almost be like them going into like cryostasis, where they could set the hive ship or whatever to go to whatever system, and they could go into stasis until they get disturbed, and then they wake up and, you know, proceed to eat and kill stuff. So I don't know.
Genestealers have an innate sense of survival and will go to any lengths to prolong their life, resulting in a fascinating evolutionary strategy. If a hive fleet has descended onto a world and the invasion has reached its zenith, where the defenders of the planet have no hope left, then the Genestealers will detect this and will attempt to flee, knowing that in order to ensure their continued survival, that they cannot be reabsorbed by the hive fleet. Interestingly, the Ymgarl variants display the opposite behavior to this. They will instead try to rapidly return to the hive, desperately seeking to be reabsorbed into the loving embrace of the hive mind.
Interesting.
Once they have detected the warm and familiar sense of the fleet, they will emerge from hibernation and, even if malnourished, will rapidly rip their way across a planet, urgently seeking their kin. Sadly, they are always rejected. The fleet will never reabsorb their unstable traits, leaving the outcast Genestealers to return to hibernation, condemning them to near certain starvation. This does beg the question, however. If they are always left to die, then why are they so widespread across the galaxy?
How do they keep coming back?
To answer this, you must
before he says anything further, I wonder if it's a situation where, like, maybe these Ymgarl Genestealers were from an earlier version of the Tyranids that were left behind from, you know, who knows how long ago. You know, if it's true that there have been potential findings of Tyranids, 20,000, years ago to whatever the present is in the 40k universe, the 41st millennium, whatever, then maybe these are offshoots that were left behind, from previous invasions, et cetera, et cetera.
Widespread across the galaxy. To answer this, you must understand that the forces of the Imperium are always striving towards best understanding their foes. Oftentimes, agents of the Ordo Biologies will enact expeditions to long-dead worlds, consumed centuries ago by the Tyranids, in the hopes of discovering some rare key to their survival, which could be adapted into a deadly and effective weapon against the fleets. Similarly, desperate pirates or greedy rogue traders will sometimes descend on these worlds, looking for valuable artifacts with which to sell on, or abandoned equipment to repurpose for their own survival. When these ships land, an Ymgarl Genestealer may emerge from their years of hibernation, finally sensing the presence of new, warm blood for them to consume. Upon awakening, they may stow themselves away within the cracks and crevices of the ship, and through this vector they can spread out through the galaxy, finding themselves within a veritable ocean of prey to feast upon. Due to their instinctual urge to return to a hive, they have become incredibly sensitive to the echoes of the hive mind, and can detect even the faintest screams of an encroaching hive fleet long before the first of the vanguard forces have been deployed onto a planet.
As they're talking about, these connections to the hive mind, and I'm pretty sure they're like psychically linked or whatever in various ways, I can't help but ask the question, just like in the original StarCraft, where there was a mission where they were able to send up some kind of like psionic boosters or whatever that would attract the Zerg. I would think, has anything like that happened in the 40k universe where they've somehow been able to create some kind of, humanity is a little iffy about creating new technology, but maybe the Necrons or the Eldar have created some kind of, technology or beacons that they could use to get the Tyranids to go to a specific location so they could like ambush them or attack them, or perhaps even the opposite, like create some kind of, psionic beacons that would repulse them, that would be interesting. I would assume that hasn't happened, because if that has, that would obviously be a big tactical advantage for anyone who could do that. But maybe something like that has happened, and the Tyranids have then evolved and, overcame that weakness, etc. I don't know. Let me know if anything like that's happened in any of the stories so far.
Before the first of the vanguard forces have been deployed onto a planet. Thanks to this adaptation, the Ymgarl can seek out planets which they believe to be in the oncoming path of an approaching hive fleet, desperately hoping to finally be reabsorbed.
Yeah.
On rare occasions, these Genestealers can find themselves on a ship which will be lost to the warp, or one which has met another terrible fate. Any stray corpses or fleeting survivors upon these derelict space hulks will be scoured for blood by the alien horrors before the creatures finally return to hibernation, waiting for an unfortunate team to explore the floating barge, which they will devour with animalistic intent.
Well, and that also brings up another question, like, if some of these Genestealers were to be lost on a ship that gets stuck in the warp, wouldn't they then want to go out and hunt down any kind of chaos entities that are out there? I would assume that, the physical essence of the chaos, the bodies or whatever of the chaos beings in there would still have some kind of blood that they could absorb and they would want to go out and hunt them down. You know what I mean? So
barge, which they will devour with animalistic intent. Imperial scholars are continuously locked in perplexed debate regarding the Ymgarl. Where did they come from? Was there a previously unknown hive fleet which introduced them? Are they a sign of another hive fleet, yet to reach the galaxy?
yeah.
And can their metabolic instability be introduced to other hive fleets as a virus?
Huh. That's actually an interesting idea. Turn it into a weapon that they essentially burn themselves out before they can do anything. Interesting idea. But that also kind of goes along with the the questions I was bringing up earlier, is that maybe they're an offshoot, or maybe there were some other kind of evolution of a previous version of the Tyranids from a long time ago, and the Tyranids have since evolved to remove that trait, and the hive mind just doesn't want to reabsorb them. Or maybe it is another situation where there's multiple hive minds of Tyranids, and we just don't know that yet. Maybe there are actually different offshoots of Tyranid evolution, and these Ymgarls are part of another hive mind from another invasion of Tyranids from basically a different Tyranid species altogether from long ago or something. Who knows? That'd be interesting to find out.
Can their metabolic instability be introduced to other hive fleets as a virus? There was previously much consideration as to whether or not these creatures could be classified as real Tyranids, or if they were a separate organism altogether. Many a biology's magos have now agreed that they are true Tyranids, derived from a hive fleet like the other creatures encountered. The current leading theory on their origin is that the Ymgarl may have been introduced to the galaxy during the 35th millennium, where hive fleet Tiamat first probed Imperial space. Tiamat is a curious phenomena amongst the Tyranids, where the hive has conquered a small binary star sector containing several lush, biodiverse worlds teeming with life. However, the Tyranids have not stripped them bare, and they also do not appear to be spreading across to other worlds or star systems. Instead, they seem to be slowly tyrannoforming the planets, whilst preserving some of the biodiversity previously found on the world, which is adapting to the Tyranid changes along with the forces of the hive. The Tyranids of this world have unique adaptations, with their chitinous plates of armor providing far superior protection against energy and kinetic blasts.
I wonder if that's a situation where, like, some of the worlds the Tyranids find suitable to terraform as either as like, a forward operating station, a headquarters of some sort, or if they find the biodiversity of a planet so lush that they use it as kind of like a petri dish to play with evolutionary strains of Tyranids, and they just, they don't absorb all the life. They kind of keep it in balance in certain ways as they're terraforming the planet and allowing, like I said, just doing various tests and simulations on evolutionary strains of Tyranids to see what they want to produce, and absorbing various types of life on the planet as well. Interesting. That's interesting that they would do that.
Far superior protection against energy and kinetic blasts. When they have been observed in combat, they will use this to great advantage, shielding themselves in dense clutches as they charge, becoming something akin to a rapidly moving living shield.
Yeah, like a phalanx.
Some believe that these Tyranids act as something akin to a beacon to the other hive fleets, signaling to them that there are indeed planets in this galaxy which have abundant levels of biomass to consume. It is also theorized that the Tyranids here did not reach the planet through a hive fleet. They postulate that Tyranid DNA fragments may have been sent out through the void of intergalactic space like a seed, which nestled itself on the planets of the Tiamat system and allowed the creatures to evolve and take hold, like something akin to a virus. Inquisitors now believe that the Ymgarl were a part of this hive and spread across the galaxy through the Imperial ships which were sent to unsuccessfully eradicate the Tyranids of Tiamat. The Genestealers would have stowed themselves away, allowing their unknowing hosts to take them to every corner of the galaxy, where they wait in their long hibernation for a hive fleet to approach. The full truth as to where the Ymgarl originate from is still yet to be uncovered. Whatever their origin, they are surely nothing but a foul scourge to be eradicated. The denizens of this galaxy should always be alert to the possibility that an Ymgarl Genestealer may be lurking in the shadows, where it is simply waiting to be disturbed, upon which they will emerge, ready to devour the blood of their newfound victim.
All right. Well, there we go. Another great video by the Scholar's Lore. And like I said earlier, the link to Scholar's Lore channel and to this video will be down below in the description. So if you want to check out his channel, go give him a, give this video that he made a like, give him a sub. Check out some more of his content. He's got a lot of 40k content. But if you also just want to watch this video without any of my, reaction and commentary, feel free to do so. Very interesting video. The Tyranids are kind of a faction that really is fascinating to me, in that there's just, I guess, from what I know of them, there isn't a lot known, so it just leads to a lot more questions. And this video just leads to a lot more questions. The idea, I find it fascinating that the idea that the Tyranids have taken over and terraformed a planet, but they haven't fully consumed all the biomass in it like they would normally and move on. And it just, like I said, seems like they're using it as almost like a testing ground to test various evolutionary traits for Tyranids, being that there's other Tyranids on the planet that have better armor, that make them more resistant to energy blasts, and they then have also developed other fighting tactics based around those traits, where they kind of congregate together and almost form like a phalanx shield wall, from what he was talking about, as they move forward to protect themselves from energy blasts where the armor isn't necessarily present. That's very interesting to me. It's very interesting, just very fascinating. And just the idea in general of that there's various offshoots of Tyranid evolution or genetics that the hive mind potentially doesn't want, and maybe that these are previous versions of Tyranids from maybe a time long ago, or perhaps even there's multiple hive minds of Tyranids, and this is an evolutionary strain that is from a different Tyranid hive mind that this current one potentially doesn't want anything to do with. That's just my personal speculation. But then also the idea of potentially weaponizing these Ymgarls because of their insane metabolic needs, to potentially use that to force that evolutionary trait to spread through the current Tyranid hives, in the systems, to essentially get them to starve themselves before they can spread out. Maybe as even just a way of containing them further, to allow other forces to get in and attack them and keep pushing them back. So a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of interesting questions that just kind of, bring up more questions about the Tyranids. But this stuff, I just love this stuff. This stuff is fascinating to me. So yeah, like I said, another great video from the Scholar's Lore. Link down below in the description. So check out his stuff if you want to. If you enjoyed this video, do consider leaving a like and a sub. I would greatly appreciate it, as it helps me and helps the channel grow. And yeah, I appreciate you guys, whoever's still watching here at the very end. Thank you guys very much for watching the video all the way through. It means a lot. Hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.